Something happened inside the WNBA that nobody was truly ready for. Not the players, not the media, and definitely not the Indiana Fever. What began as a routine post-game exchange suddenly ignited one of the most emotional and divisive debates women's basketball has ever seen. Fans who casually tuned in were blindsided, but the people who've been watching the tension build over the last few years, they knew this moment wasn't random at all. It was waiting to explode. The spark was small. The fallout was massive. And when Sue Bird stepped forward and delivered a blunt, fearless breakdown of what she called a long-ignored racial crisis inside the league, everything shifted instantly. The Fever, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Alyssa Thomas, the media narrative, none of it would ever look the same. Before we dive deeper, drop your thoughts below. Do you think Caitlin Clark has truly been targeted, or is the outrage exaggerated? The turning point came from what should have been a harmless question to Dejanai Carrington. Journalist Christine Brennan simply asked whether she intended to hit Caitlin Clark in the eye during a follow-through. It should have been a routine clarification. Athletes get asked about tough plays all the time. But before Carrington could even explain, Megan Rapinoe stepped in with a reaction that completely reframed the moment. She said the question felt racially loaded, even if unintentionally. And with that, everything snapped. What should have been a conversation about a physical play morphed into a national debate about racial undertones, media framing, and the long history of unequal scrutiny placed on black athletes versus white athletes in women's sports. Sue Bird, never one to sugarcoat anything, immediately seized the moment. On a wide-reaching podcast conversation with Rapinoe, she refused to gloss over what was really happening. She said the question itself likely wasn't malicious, but the media spin that followed, especially from large outlets, amplified racial tension that had been simmering under the surface for years. She pointed out a truth that is often uncomfortable for fans to hear. Black athletes consistently receive harsher criticism, more aggressive coverage, and more intense public judgment than white players in nearly identical situations. Her message wasn't that Clark did something wrong. Her message was that the environment around her was distorting a much bigger issue. Within hours, the situation spiraled far beyond anything the players could control. Troll accounts, bots, and agenda-driven commenters flooded timelines, hijacking the conversation. A brand new narrative formed, one claiming WNBA players hated Caitlin Clark, that they were jealous of her fame, that they were threatened by her presence. Sue Bird called the storyline absurd, but she also explained why it gained so much traction. Clips of defenders picking up Clark full court or blocking her shots were taken out of context, edited, reposted, and misinterpreted by millions of people who weren't familiar with the physicality of professional basketball. The competition looked personal to outsiders. It wasn't. But once a narrative catches fire, facts don't stand a chance. And then Diana Taurasi's old quote resurfaced. Months earlier, she had casually told reporters that Clark would need time to adjust to the pros. A harmless, honest veteran statement. But suddenly it was treated like a warning, a threat, an omen. Fans who had never watched Taurasi before were convinced she was getting ready to humble Clark. Sue Bird said that was the moment things turned truly toxic. She said the game stopped being about basketball and became a battleground for cultural resentment, online warfare, and accusations of racism from people who had never watched a WNBA game before the season. Bird then dropped a statement that froze the entire conversation. She said Caitlin Clark wasn't just being talked about, she was being used as a pawn in a much larger cultural fight that had nothing to do with her actual behavior. Clark wasn't the aggressor. She wasn't asking for special attention. She wasn't trying to overshadow anyone, but her popularity made her the centerpiece of every agenda. Whether it was anti-WNBA narratives, racial debates, political talking points, or simply people hungry for controversy, everyone projected their frustrations onto her. That's when Angel Reese and Alyssa Thomas came into the picture. They publicly claimed Clark benefited from a white girl advantage, that the league was pushing her, promoting her, and elevating her in ways black players never experienced despite years of success. They didn't whisper it, they said it directly. And in doing so, they cracked open a long-suppressed conversation about visibility, marketing equity, and the financial imbalance inside women's basketball. But Sue Bird said blaming Clark personally was the wrong direction entirely. She argued that faulting Clark for a league-wide issue punishes the one person who is actually helping bring money, exposure, and national attention into the sport. Bird made an even more personal point when she revealed she had spoken privately with Clark. She said Clark is not a chosen corporate celebrity coasting on privilege. She's someone who works relentlessly and absorbs pressure at a level no rookie in the league has ever faced. Bird's tone shifted here, not defensive but protective. She made it clear that Clark's success is legitimate, earned, and grounded in the kind of consistent excellence that shows up every single night on the court. She insisted that the conversation about race is necessary, but weaponizing against Clark obscures the real systemic problems the league needs to fix. The next revelation stunned everyone. Bird said Clark was facing more than aggressive defense. She said players were intentionally mocking her, trash-talking her beyond normal competition, and in some cases physically testing her in ways that cross a line. Plays like Chindi Carter's cheap shot weren't isolated moments. They were symptoms of the emotional tension boiling over. And when fans stepped in to defend Clark, the arguments hardened. The lines deepened. Suddenly everything, fouls, comments, celebrations, became evidence in a cultural trial no one asked for. This brings us to the Indiana Fever. Behind the scenes, they realized something critical. They were not just managing a rookie sensation. They were managing the most polarizing athlete the WNBA has ever welcomed. Every decision they make will be scrutinized. Every roster shift will be interpreted through the lens of Clark's future. And so, the Fever are preparing a full organizational transformation. New leadership has already been installed. A new general manager, a strengthened front office. And according to everything being reported, head coach Christy Sides will not return next season. The Fever want a system that fully maximizes Clark's strengths: spacing, pace, deep shooting, high IQ playmaking, and they already construct a roster around her timeline. Clark shattered expectations. She didn't just drive attendance. She transformed the league's economy. She lifted television numbers to levels nobody had predicted for years. And because her impact is this massive, the Fever aren't simply adjusting. They're rebuilding, deliberately, urgently, and with a clear goal, become a top 4 contender next season. But here's the part that so many people outside Indiana don't fully grasp. This rebuild isn't just about basketball. It's about repairing trust within the team, within the fan base, and within a league that has never seen this kind of cultural collision before. The Fever are carrying the weight of two realities at once. On one hand, they have the most electrifying talent to enter the league in more than a decade. On the other hand, they're navigating a fractured environment where every mistake becomes a headline, every foul becomes a controversy, and every comment becomes another spark in a debate that extends far beyond sports. That's why the Fever aren't waiting. They're not dragging their feet. They understand exactly what's at stake, and they know the margin for error is razor thin. And it's not just the organization feeling the pressure. Clark herself is entering a new phase of her career, one where expectations aren't just high, they're historic. She's no longer the college superstar with nothing to lose. Now, she's the face of a franchise and the name attached to every broadcast graphic, every marketing push, and every national debate. She has to balance being a competitor, a leader, and a cultural lightning rod, all before turning 24. Sue Bird emphasized that Clark's ability to handle all of this with maturity is exactly why the Fever must build around her, not beside her. They need players who complement her style, coaches who understand her pace, and a system designed for someone who can hit logo threes and thread impossible passes in the same possession. And here's something fans should pay attention to. The Fever's front office changes aren't random. They're strategic. They're building a team equipped to handle the spotlight. A roster with veterans who understand pressure, defenders who can relieve Clark from carrying every possession, shooters who can punish double teams, and leaders who can shape a locker room culture that doesn't crack under scrutiny. The Fever know they can't waste time. They can't afford a 3-year development window. In the modern WNBA, windows close fast. Stars expect results. Fans expect growth. And Clark's influence has already accelerated the timeline. So as the Fever reshape their identity, the league watches closely. Will Indiana rise and become the powerhouse they're capable of being? Or will the outside noise continue to drown out the progress being made behind the scenes? One thing is certain. The 2025 season won't just determine the Fever's trajectory. It may determine the entire direction of the WNBA's future. And that's why your perspective matters, now more than ever. But even beyond the Fever, The ripple effects of this moment are reshaping the entire WNBA landscape. Other teams are already adjusting their strategies, not just on the court, but in how they market their stars, how they communicate with fans, and how they prepare for the cultural spotlight that Clark has unintentionally dragged into the league. For years, the WNBA has fought for recognition, visibility, and respect. Now that the attention has finally arrived, it's come with a level of intensity and polarization no one fully anticipated. And the league has to decide, right now, how it will adapt. Coaches around the league are quietly studying the fever, trying to understand what this new era means for competitive balance. General managers are recalibrating their rosters, looking for defenders who can guard extended-range shooters, looking for playmakers who can counter the pace Clark brings, and looking for veterans who can manage the emotional swing of a season where every game becomes a national talking point. Even the league office is under pressure. Policies, officiating standards, media access, all of it is being scrutinized, and all will shape how the WNBA evolves in the coming years. And then there's the fan base. The influx of new viewers has brought excitement, but it has also brought tension, misinformation, and intense tribalism. Longtime fans feel protective. New fans feel defensive. Players feel overwhelmed. And through it all, Clark has become the unexpected centerpiece of a cultural moment that neither she nor the league asked for, but both must now navigate. That's why the upcoming season won't simply be about wins and losses. It will be about whether the WNBA can grow without fracturing, whether players can compete without becoming symbols, whether teams can build without being drowned out by drama. So let me ask you, are we witnessing the rise of the WNBA's new golden era, or the beginning of its most turbulent chapter yet? Do you believe this rebuilt fever, centered around Caitlin Clark, can rise into the WNBA's elite, or will the division surrounding her continue to overshadow the team's progress? Drop your thoughts in the comments.